Santa Clarita's hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Hey, make sure you go to hometownstation.com for all the latest and greatest Santa Clarita has to offer. I'm Kyle Jolly. It's good to have you with me. Special 11 o'clock show here, and we have Wade Skalsky. He is a defense attorney. And you can go to usewade.com for more information, or you can keep listening. And because we have Wade with us now. How you doing, Wade?
I'm doing great today. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm doing well. And so you are. I want to talk about you. You're a Santa Clarita resident, and you are a defense attorney.
Absolutely, yeah. I've been doing that for about 15, 16 years now.
Okay. And so you started. We were talking briefly before we started here. Let's go past and present, and maybe future. Who knows?
Great.
But past. So what did you do? You grew up in?
I actually grew up
all over the place.
Yeah, all over the place. I actually grew up in North Dakota for most of my childhood, and
which I did not know. One, that there were people lived there,
and they don't let them escape from there.
And
so right, exactly. So
I didn't know there were children there. Actually,
there are.
Yeah.
So they teach you adult things from a very early age, like how to shoot in camp and all of that. So,
okay.
But my family moved to Arizona for high school and college, so I was down in Arizona for high school and college.
That is a big change.
Well, there's some symmetry to it because it goes from the most cold place in the United States to the hottest place in the United States.
Yeah.
So I got to have both extremes.
Yeah, and you like the heat better, I assume.
I like moderate temperature. That's why I live in Santa Clarita.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you went to you went to high school in Tucson? Is that what you said?
I did. Yes.
In Tucson.
Yes.
And then you graduated from high school.
Yeah, went to the University of Arizona.
Okay.
So
Go Wildcats.
Bear down Wildcats. Absolutely.
Okay. They're playing well right now.
Yeah, their football team's pretty good. They always come to California and have a problem with the California schools. So I know there's a lot of USC fans out there, and wide right for us Wildcats this year.
Yeah.
So USC escaped.
Yeah. All right. So you went and where did you go to law school?
I went to law school at George Washington University in Washington D.C.
Okay, so you all over the place.
A little bit, yeah. I've been around the way.
Okay. And so when you were a kid, did you growing up? Did you watch movies? Did you watch George or Carl was talking about Perry Mason? Did you watching those type of shows?
I was a Matlock fan.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think it was the white suit and kind of the homespun stories, and people always did what he said. So I like that. So, but it was funny though. I never when I was younger, I come from a construction family, so construction and farming. So that was in the beginning. Maybe I thought that's what I was going to do.
Okay. And what changed with being a lawyer? What was it?
It was funny. I'm the first in my family to go to college, and actually the first to go to graduate school, and I think my parents really tried to instill in us that education was important, but they didn't have really an idea beyond that. So they said, well, be a doctor or a lawyer. And so I'm not really good at math or science, so I was like, lawyer it is.
There it is.
Yeah, and that was kind of how it started. But as I got older and learned more about it, I really got interested in it.
Yeah, and so you enjoyed going to GW, right?
I did. I loved it. Washington, D.C. is a great place to go to law school. I got to do an internship at the Department of Justice.
Oh,
I got
sweet.
to, the Supreme Court is right down the street. You're playing flag football by the Lincoln Monument. So it was a great experience.
That's cool. And so, what type of law, when you first started, what type of law did you think you were going to get into, and what ended up happening?
Sure. Well, the funny thing is, I used to watch L.A. Law. I don't know if you're familiar with that show, but so I had this big idea of being like a courtroom lawyer and doing corporate law, and so that's what my idea going into law school was. And then when I came out of law school, I found out that if you want to get trial experience, the fastest way to do that is to go work and be a prosecutor. So that was my goal in the beginning was, well, I just want to get a lot of trial experience, and then I'll go do, beyond doing defense, go into some kind of corporate work.
Okay, so you graduated from GW, and then what happened after that?
I got a job back in Arizona, in Phoenix as a prosecutor. So I went back to Arizona, and I was there for about 3 or 4 years being a prosecutor. And my best friend lived out in Santa Monica, and I had came to visit him, and I'd never been to California. I was like, hey, this is pretty great, the ocean.
Santa Monica.
Yeah, exactly. And I got tired of 115 for 100 straight days in Phoenix, and I ended up moving to California.
Okay, and what part of California did you come to first? Did you come to Santa Clarita?
No, I went to Santa Monica first.
Okay.
And so I went to Santa Monica, and I lived on my friend's couch like an actor, took the bar out here and started my practice from there. Nice.
Okay, so and how was that? So I hear from attorneys and people who just finished law school, they say the LSAT is the worst day ever, and then the bar is even the worser day ever.
Yeah, well, it's the California bar is the worst 3 days ever.
Because, jeez.
Yeah, so it's 3 straight days. By that third day, you don't really care if you're pass or fail. You just want it to be done. So, and they have you in this huge auditorium with thousands of other people taking it, and so it's a really high intense environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that experience, just intense. Like, what's that like when you finish it though?
It was great.
Yeah.
It was it definitely felt like we should have a party or something,
Yeah.
but you're just so tired. So and I took it in Ontario.
Okay.
And so I was at a hotel there in Ontario. It's just to be there. So I don't know anyone in Ontario. So I was like, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you finished your bar, you pass it, which you don't find out for like a couple months, right?
Months, yeah, exactly.
A couple months. So you pass it, and then you start your own practice, right?
Correct, right.
And you, at that point, so you were in Tucson, you were a prosecutor.
In Phoenix, I was a prosecutor.
In Phoenix, excuse me. Phoenix, you were a prosecutor. Here, once you opened your practice, you were a defense attorney.
I was, yeah. Two reasons for that. One is that when I moved out here, there was a hiring freeze for 3 years. Nobody was hiring in the prosecutor's office.
Okay.
And then also, too, though, is I had done some defense work when I was in Arizona, and I actually really, really enjoyed it because I really enjoyed helping normal people in a jam. That's
Okay.
sort of the focus of my practice. The real gnarly, heavy stuff. I have friends that I farm that stuff out to, but I focus mostly on people like you, people like me. Maybe there's a mistake that was made, something. Maybe you got a DUI or something, and you've got a whole other life that doesn't deserve to be totally jammed up and destroyed because you made a mistake. So that's what I really started to focus on. I really enjoyed that, just helping normal people.
And that's what you noticed while you were in Phoenix? Like you did a couple of defense
when I
trials?
I left the prosecutor's office and I had my own firm there for a little bit, and then that's when I visited my friend and I had to make a decision, because when you start a firm, it's hard, and you're not gonna, if you do it for 5 years and you have it established, you're not gonna move it. So
Yeah.
I kind of decided where I was gonna plant my flag, and decided that was gonna be California.
Gotcha. Okay. And so explain what the difference is for maybe some people. What's the difference between a prosecutor and a defense attorney?
Sure. Well, a prosecutor works for the government, and they're the person that's in charge of, if you break the law and are accused of a crime, they're the person that is in charge of basically representing the government in the case. So their job is to basically represent the government and say, okay, well, we're going to try to convict you of a crime, or have a plea negotiation so that you have to pay a penalty, and that's their job. A defense attorney basically represents an individual, a normal person like you and me. So the government has all the resources in the world. It has all of the money, all the investigators, all the technology, everything. And if the government points its finger at you and says, all right, we're going to accuse you of a crime, all you have is yourself, whatever money you have, and your defense attorney. And so it's not really a fair fight sometimes, but that's the difference. And that's the defense attorney's job, is to represent your rights, to protect you from the government, and to make sure that your rights are adhered to, and to fight for you. And that's basically the difference between the two. It's an adversarial system. And I've been on both sides. So, I'm very familiar with, in terms of, they're totally different roles. People sometimes have a misunderstanding of, well, how can you do what you do as a defense attorney? And because I think it's just if they understood the roles, and were educated about it, they'd go, okay, that's a really important thing that we need. And it's really great we have that.
And that was my next question is, you watch movies, obviously. People
Sure.
watch movies, people watch TV.
Sure.
And the defense attorney is usually a negative thing in terms
Right.
in movies and things like that. So,
Right.
and so, you don't deal with, obviously you're not working with the mob or anything like that, like in Goodfellas or
Well,
something.
Don't tell anyone.
Oh,
yeah,
geez.
no,
Hey,
just
easy.
kidding. Of course not. No, of course not.
And but it's important for people to know that there are people like you who don't, represent the mob, right?
Well, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of lawyers. And so it's just like any other job, is that it's a range. There are some on one end of the range that are really, really, really bad. And then there are some that are on the other end of the range that are incredible. And, most of everybody else falls in between. And so, in Hollywood we'll portray stereotypes, but that's just what it is. It's a stereotype. It's a huge field. There's thousands of lawyers. And so there's many different personalities.
And it makes for good movies sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I love legal. I don't watch legal TV shows as much, because that's what I do. I'm in court every day, so I don't really want to come home from court and then watch more court.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I do enjoy a good legal movie now.
So my friend who just graduated from law school,
Okay.
he said that there's like internet sites that just say, all of these things, like Matlock should have been disbarred so many times. Is that true?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm sure that policemen say the same thing about when they'll show a police show like that will never work, or firemen, that'll never work. The day-to-day what happens in real life is a lot different than the movies. But every once in a while, like every 4 or 5 months, you might get a movie moment.
Oh,
and that's
really?
Actually, really, really cool when that happens.
Yeah. So you get your hang on the helicopter moment for a lawyer.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you point to the door and you say, "Your Honor, someone's going to walk through that door and change the case." And magically it happens.
How cool is it to say objection? Tell me the truth. Well, like take me back to the first time you ever said objection.
Sure.
How good did it feel?
Well, it didn't feel very good because I think I was totally incorrect in my objection. But when you're first, there's nothing like doing a jury trial. There's nothing like doing motion practice or being in court. So, and I've been doing it for a long time now. I'm entering in my 16th year. But that first 5 years when you're, I still get a rush from trial. I'll watch a verdict of someone else's trial and I'll still get nervous in a good way, and so that never goes away. But it's a really fun experience. So go ahead.
And you are in trial a lot, right? That's your thing, right?
Well, listen, I've done I've done a ton of trials, and my goal is to try to always avoid trial if I can, only because they're expensive and they're risky. So I always, most of the time, am able to put my clients into a position to where they're able to avoid trial. But sometimes, you're forced to go to trial.
Yeah. We're speaking with Wade Skalsky. He is a defense attorney. You can find out more information by going to usewade.com. So you talked a little bit about it's sometimes tricky. And I think that has to do, I assume, with the jury, right? Mm-hmm. And so let's take a break and we'll come back and we'll talk about maybe how you select a jury for a trial, because you do that often, right? Yeah, well, every jury trial you do, you got to pick a jury, and it's never the same, and it's always interesting. Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. More with Wade Skalsky after this. AM 1220 KHTS. AM 1220 KHTS, your hometown station. We're talking with Wade Skalsky. He is a defense attorney here in the Santa Clarita Valley, and we kind of skipped over some stuff. We kind of went from GW we went to Santa Monica. We got to Santa Monica with you. But then we forgot to say, how did you come here to the Santa Clarita Valley? And what was the process there? You were in Santa Monica next to the beach. Things were going great. You were sleeping on a couch or something, right? Well, that was the beginning. That didn't last too long, hopefully. That's good. So, but well, it was actually really simple. So when I moved out here, I was a bachelor. And then, I met my wife out here. And we just, we were dating for a while. And then when we got married, we were looking for a more family-oriented place. Then, we were looking at Santa Monica, and she was living in Hollywood. And, Santa Clarita was such a great destination for those values and what we wanted. So that's why I moved up here. And your wife is an actress? She is, yes. Okay. Yep. What is she? You said, so we were talking before the show, and you said your wife showed up at the house yesterday covered in fake blood or something. Right, right. Yeah, she was doing a shoot for a TV show where she was doing a reenactment of some sort of natural disaster, and she comes home and she's drenched in fake blood, and she looks like she's got run over by a truck, and it was a little disconcerting, but that's kind of the. There was a moment there when she walked in. There was a couple seconds where you're like, oh my gosh, you okay? Yes. Okay. My defense attorney mind had two questions in it. First of all, one, are you okay? And is that your blood? And two, I hope that's not someone else's blood. So, but yeah, no. So of course, it was just fake blood. And no one was hurt. It was great. So it was an interesting experience. Well, yeah, I would think it was interesting. Yes. Okay, so we were talking before the break. You're an attorney, so you go to trial every once in a while. You try to avoid it. And so explain again why you try to avoid going to trial. Well, I mean, look, first of all, it's expensive. So, a jury trial is you're in trial anywhere from 4 days to could be as much as a month or 2 months, depending on, the complexity of the case. And but also it's risky. So it's up to the jury to decide. And if they decide against you, then, your client suffers those consequences. Whatever the consequences may be. Right, right. And in my business, sometimes people go to jail. So, my whole goal is to, like I said, see if we can't get the case either dismissed or reduced to something else that is not going to impact them. And if we can accomplish that, we avoid trial. And really, both sides win. The prosecution, the people don't have to spend a bunch of money on a trial, and my clients get the benefit of not having a criminal conviction on their record. So that's what we always try to do. It's not one of those things where I try to go to trial in every case because I like to do it. So yeah, and so one process that people probably don't realize is that you have to do if you go to trial is picking a jury.
Right.
And people know, they get the notices in the mail, oh man, I got to go to jury duty.
The most question that people always ask me at a cocktail party is, how do I get out of jury duty? And so I have to tell them that I'm an attorney and I cannot advise you how to do that. You must comply with your civil duty. So
Nice.
that's the answer
All
I
right.
give. Yeah. And so that's the only lawyer answer you'll let me give today. You know?
Okay.
So.
But how do you select a jury? And juries, are they always 12 people?
It depends. I mean, it depends on the jurisdiction you're in. It depends on if it's a civil case or a criminal case. But typically is that, it's a very individual process for each lawyer. And so it's not sort of I pick a jury a certain way, but it's not something necessarily that I could write a book about and say, pick a jury this way. Because for me, a lot of it is on feel and experience. There was a book that was written, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell that wrote it, Blink. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but the book is, and I may be getting the author wrong, but the book basically says a lot of science says that your first intuition is the right one usually.
Okay.
And that's every time that I've gone against my first intuition on jury selection, it's always been a bad idea. So I try not to talk myself out of what I feel about a situation, and then it's using your common sense, and going from there. And it's case specific too.
And so how does the process work? You choose somebody, the prosecutor has to agree on it, or what is that process?
It's actually kind of an elaborate process. What happens is they bring in a bunch of people into a courtroom, okay? And then the judge starts asking them general questions so that we can get an idea of, who they are, what kind of job they have they ever had any contact with the authorities, whatever. And then we get to ask them questions, and then some people are just basically excused because they're just not a good fit. And then there's this chess game between us and the other side trying to decide, okay, who, because we only get so many abilities to get someone off of the jury.
Okay.
And then after you run out, and that's the jury. So there's a chess game that's there.
So it's like if you run out of tokens. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It's like at your arcade and you're playing skee ball, and there's you run out of tokens, no more skee ball. You know? So, but the big issue too is I think it's another difference between the movies and real life is that you never get a perfect jury. You never get who you want on the jury. It's always sort of it's a collection of who's the best of the worst that's available kind of situation, and not in a bad way. It's just that our interests are different than the prosecutor's interests. So the prosecutor wants a certain set of people on there. We want a certain set of people on there with certain values, and those are competing interests. And it's a really interesting process. I enjoy it.
And that seems like you'd have to know people pretty well.
You've got to have a good
sense of, and quickly, I would assume too.
You don't have a lot of time. Yeah. Things happen quickly. You've got to be organized because you've got a lot of information in a short period of time, and that just comes with experience. After about your 50th jury trial, you're like, okay, I've got this down in terms of what I can do, and also is your strategy for a trial, what you are trying to communicate. You may want to communicate those messages that will impact who you pick for your jury.
Man, that's a lot of stuff to worry about.
They don't teach that to you in law school either. Actually, they teach almost nothing about the practical application of what we do in law school.
I've heard that what they do in law school is they teach you how to think.
Right, exactly.
And that's what you probably did at GW.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is too is that anybody can go on Google and look up the law or a search engine or whatever and say, okay, here's the law. But what law school teaches you is how to apply that law, and then what your experience teaches you is how does this work in the real world. There are a lot of things going on, and that only comes with experience.
Yeah. And do you know people that have they went through law school and then they started doing lawyer stuff and they're like, man, I can't handle this type of thing?
I do. I went to a really interesting story. I went to law school with a guy who he practiced law for about 6 months in Washington, D.C., and he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he went and he opened up a cake bakery. And his name is Warren Brown. He was in People's 50 Most Beautiful People one year.
Wow.
He had a TV show, and so he never practiced law again. He just baked cakes, and he was in my class. He was a great guy.
Is baking cakes the exact opposite of being a lawyer? I think it might be.
I think it might be the exact polar opposite.
Yeah.
So So
wow.
he just he's a really great guy, and I was almost jealous of him. You know what I'm saying? So I can't bake anything. So but I don't have that skill.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You can go to usewade.com. We're speaking with Wade Skalsky. He is a defense attorney, and just to wrap up here. You said you don't take on the real crazy cases as a defense attorney, but so talk to me about why you became a defense attorney.
Sure.
And who it is, because you mentioned this earlier, but I want you to make sure people hear it.
Sure.
And why you became a defense attorney and who it is that you look to represent.
Well, first, let me start out by saying that I believe that every person, no matter what they're accused of, has an absolute right to be defended by a lawyer. That's a cornerstone of our system. And I've done practically every type of case. It's not that I haven't done those types of cases in my career. But when I boiled down to it and I said to myself, look, I have my own firm. I get to decide what I want to do. What do I enjoy the most? And what I enjoy the most is just helping normal people that make a mistake. I don't believe that their whole life deserves to be upended because of one mistake. And those are the type of people that I like to help the most, because it's very satisfying, to be in those types of courtrooms and those types of cases. And it just is, it feeds me. It really drives me forward. And that's what I like to do the most. Now, I can do anything, but my focus is on helping those types of people.
Awesome. Wade Skalsky, he's a defense attorney here in Santa Clarita Valley. You can find out, again, more information. Go to usewade.com. I think, okay, here's the thing.
Sure.
Okay, I'm looking at your website here.
Okay.
Why can't we get one of you smiling here?
Well, then that's the...
What's going on here? There's a picture of you. You look, don't get me wrong, it's intimidating.
Well, here's the deal. Is when people start the process out, they want a very strong, intimidating looking lawyer. And, and that gets them to call. And then once they get to know me, then they feel comfortable. But,
gotcha.
That's a...
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not in the business.
I'll change it. I'll change it tomorrow.
Okay.
So.
Maybe on the About page, there's an About page. Have some nice smiling Wade.
I like it.
Maybe?
I like it.
All right. Anyway. Thanks again for stopping by. I appreciate you. And go to, again, usewade.com for more information on Wade Skalsky. He's the defense attorney here in the Santa Clarita Valley.
Thank you so much for having me, Kyle. Appreciate it.